I became the stepmother of the mini-boss in a horror game. Everyone thought I'd be the first to die. The expendable side character fated to scream once and vanish. But who would have guessed? Just because I cooked a meal, the little boss stared at me with sparkling eyes full of anticipation? And when I took out a book to read before bed, he obediently closed his eyes and drifted off to sleep. I couldn't help but think, what a well-behaved child. Later that night, after the great boss finished his massacre and returned home, he softened his tone the moment he saw me. "My lady, you must be tired." Then the system's cold, mechanical voice echoed in my head. "Welcome to Count Alexander Smith's manor. Your new identity is that of the Count's nominal wife, the lady he just married. Maintain this role and survive 7 days in the manor. Do not act out of character. Have a pleasant death." In the blink of an eye, the shabby apartment around me melted away, replaced by a grand and ancient castle. Servants moved silently through the marble halls, dusting chandeliers and polishing floors. When they glanced at me dressed in an elegant gown fit for a countess, their eyes flickered with pity. According to the game's background notes, Count Alexander Smith was rumored to be cold-blooded and cruel, while his 6-year-old son was said to eat human hearts. A true little monster. So, naturally, every player who entered this instance prayed not to be assigned any role remotely close to the father and son duo. But me? I was oddly satisfied. In my previous life, I'd been terminally ill, my body frail, my days numbered. If my final moments could be spent enjoying a bit of luxury before dying again, that didn't sound so bad. Just as that thought crossed my mind, a deep, emotionless voice spoke beside me. It belonged to the butler. Tall, stiff, impeccably dressed in a tailcoat, his gaze colder than a morgue slab. "Madam, the young master has returned from his lessons. Please join him for dinner." Immediately, the system's live chat window exploded before my eyes. The last newbie who got called to dinner screamed when she saw the kid eating a heart, and then offered her own heart next. "This one's dead for sure. Rip, brave soul." Let's have a moment of silence. Pretending not to see the comments, I followed the butler to the dining hall. It was dusk. Under the crystal chandelier, a little boy sat waiting, clearly annoyed by how long he'd been kept. He looked around 5 or 6 years old. Pale, adorable, dressed in a tiny British-style uniform, every movement elegant and refined. Except for one detail. On the plate before him lay a human heart, still glistening with blood. When he noticed my stare, the boy's lips curved into a wicked smile. Then, right in front of me, he sliced off a piece and calmly placed it in his mouth. The live chat went wild again. "AAA, no matter how many times I see it, it's still so gross. She's gonna scream next and boom, her heart's on the plate." But even after he chewed and swallowed, I didn't make a sound. I simply walked over, sat down across from him, staying in character, and asked gently, "Does it taste good, son?" The little boss froze. His dark eyes widened in shock. You're not scared?" I shook my head, thinking, after everything I've been through, what's there left to fear? Glancing at the plate again, I sighed with mock seriousness. It doesn't look very appetizing. "Why don't I cook something else for you instead?" The live chat instantly exploded. Holy crap, this newbie's got nerves of steel. Unshakable composure. Absolute queen. But she just insulted the mini-boss's dinner. She's doomed. Farewell, brave newcomer. The comments flooded in like a tidal wave, all lighting virtual candles for my soul. But none of them expected what came next. The little boss fell silent. He lowered his gaze to the plate before him, then looked back up, his voice cold and clipped. "I don't need it. Cook whatever you want to eat." "Oh." I simply nodded, stood up, and headed for the kitchen. Inside, a few female chefs, players in disguise, were lounging idly, chatting without a care. When they saw me return alive, they froze mid-conversation, their eyes widening as if they'd seen a ghost. I ignored their stares and started cooking by myself. Sweet and sour ribs, stir-fried greens with garlic, and steamed eggs. By the time I finished, an hour had passed. I figured the mini-boss had long finished dinner and gone to bed, but when I carried the dishes out, he was still there. He sat exactly where I'd left him, stabbing absently at the human heart on his plate. It was almost untouched, aside from a single bite. When he noticed me, his gaze flicked over the dishes in my hands. He gave a soft, disdainful scoff. "You actually eat that kind of peasant food?" His tone was full of disgust, but I didn't mind. I sat down opposite him and began to eat with genuine satisfaction. The body I was using in this dungeon was surprisingly healthy. Everything tasted heavenly. For the first time in years, eating felt enjoyable. I was halfway through my meal when I felt eyes on me. The boy, who had been looking elsewhere, was now watching me intently. Then, in a gruff little voice, he muttered, "Is it really that good?" I took another bite and nodded enthusiastically. It's delicious. Halfway through, I looked up again just in time to catch him staring longingly at the last rib on my plate. The moment our eyes met, he whipped his head away, cheeks puffing in denial. It's just vegetables and rice. Who'd want that? He jumped to his feet, face flushed red, glaring at me like an offended cat. I'm not eating that! I couldn't help but smile. Children, always so prideful. So I got up, scooped another bowl of rice, and placed it in front of him. Wasting food isn't very well behaved, you know. The live chat went wild again. She's teasing him, she's teasing the mini-boss. This woman is insane. But wait, is it just me, or are his eyes glued to the sweet and sour ribs? The boy went quiet for a long while. Then, finally, he sat back down, his tiny face solemn as if making an important declaration. Father said, "I'm a good boy." His tone was stiff, but beneath the soft golden hair, his ears were faintly red. Cute, I thought, amused. And so, my little monster silently finished every dish on the table. The ribs, the greens, even the soup, until not a crumb was left. When he was done, he cleared his throat, trying to sound mature. It was only for my health. The taste doesn't compare to my own meals. I glanced at the spotless plates gleaming under the chandelier and smirked. Oh? And what kind of tone is that supposed to be? The boy snapped his head up, glaring furiously at me like a tiny, angry kitten with bristled fur. I almost laughed, about to say something to calm him down, but just then, the butler in his black tailcoat approached briskly, bowing. "Madam, the Count has returned. Please come to the entrance to welcome him." Wait, the Count? Wasn't he the great boss himself? In horror games like this, the final boss usually didn't appear until the last day. So, if he was returning now, I honestly couldn't tell if I'd just gotten lucky or if my death flag had just been triggered. The live chat was already buzzing again. The great boss isn't as easy to fool as the little one. Bet she won't survive till morning. Night had fallen completely. Outside the diamond-paned window, a murder of crows sliced through the dark sky, circling the spires of the castle. Their harsh, echoing cries filled the air with an eerie dread, scraping against the silence of the old manor. The moment the Count's return was announced, the little boss's eyes lit up, only for him to glance at me a second later as if remembering something. He hesitated, lips parting slightly, then closed them again, without saying a word. I didn't understand, but since he stayed quiet, I simply followed the butler toward the grand entrance. Not long after, steady footsteps echoed across the marble floor. A tall figure emerged from the shadows. He wore a classic waistcoat of fine woven fabric, a silk cravat at his chest, and a long black cloak trimmed with silver embroidery. Each step he took stirred a faint gust of wind, and with it, the metallic tang of blood. As he approached, I noticed the delicate pattern of moonflowers embroidered along the hem of his cloak. Then, lifting my gaze to his face, I froze for a heartbeat. His skin was pale, almost luminescent, like someone who hadn't seen sunlight in years. Deep-set eyes, a straight nose, a small beauty mark beneath one corner of his, eye and shoulder-length golden hair, neatly trimmed yet unruly in the breeze. Cold, dangerous, charismatic. He exuded the kind of oppressive presence that made you forget how to breathe. And yet, strangely, something about him reminded me of a boy I once knew. Don't be ridiculous, I scolded myself. He's still alive and well. Pushing the absurd thought aside, I stepped forward, remembering my role, the Count's newly wedded wife in name only. I smiled softly and greeted him. "Darling, have you had dinner yet?" For a wife, that should have been a harmless question. But the moment the words left my mouth, everyone around me froze. The live chat erupted. Oh my God, she called him darling? Does she not see the blood still dripping from his cloak? That mouth of hers is writing checks her life can't cash. Remember the last newbie who called him honey and tried to hug him? He snapped her neck and gave her head to his son to play soccer with. Welp, rip, to another brave fool. As the screen flooded with farewell emojis and virtual candles, I noticed something strange. The butler beside me didn't even blink. His face remained calm, as though he'd already accepted this as my fate. A chill ran down my spine. All around I could feel the stares, mocking, pitying, and curiosity. Had I said something wrong? Before I could piece it together, a cold hand suddenly cupped my cheek. My body went rigid. He's going to kill me, I thought. Even though I'd long accepted that my death was inevitable, the moment it felt this close, my heart still thudded violently in my chest. Oddly enough, in that final moment, I found myself thinking calmly. Should I close my eyes and wait, or keep them open and watch it happen? After a brief debate, I decided to close them. But the pain never came. Instead, a soft breeze brushed my ear. Fingertips, cold as frost, grazed my skin and gently tucked a loose strand of hair behind my ear. When I opened my eyes, he was standing inches away. His voice, low and magnetic, reverberated against my skin. "Yes, I've eaten." Before I could even process it, another voice rang out, "Father, don't kill her yet!" Two voices overlapped, one calm, one urgent. And then, silence. Because everyone realized what that second voice had just said. The mini-boss, the infamous child rumored to eat human hearts, had just asked his father not to kill me. No one seemed more shocked than the two of them. The boy had somehow appeared at my side without a sound, glaring up at the Count with surprising defiance. Then, perhaps realizing what he'd said, he turned to me, his dark eyes filled with confusion, almost as if I were the monster here. The chat exploded once again. So, who's the real monster here? The newbie? Or that father and son duo? Nah, the mini-boss isn't that bad. Kinda sweet, actually. Can't believe he just saved the newbie. That's new. He's just a kid, sure, he eats hearts. But who doesn't have hobbies? Wow, even the great boss went easy this time. Did not see that coming. Where's that wine and blade legend now, huh? Dude's gone soft. The comments were flying so fast, they blurred. The dangerously handsome man drew back his hand, slowly removed his black leather gloves, and tossed them to the butler, who looked disappointed of all things. "Why," the Count said casually, "would a father kill his own wife?" His tone was light, almost gentle. If not for the heavy scent of iron still clinging to his cloak, the blood of God knows how many victims, one might have mistaken him for a perfect gentleman from the noble courts of old, graceful, refined, and hauntingly elegant. Beside him, the little boss, Peter Smith, twitched at the corner of his mouth, as if trying to argue back. "You say that, father, but do you even believe it yourself?" He didn't dare go further. After a beat, Peter shot me a quick glance, then stiffly turned away, mumbling, "Father's right, of course, but it's getting late. I still have class tomorrow. May I ask if my stepmother could take me to bed?" His tone was all wrong, too forced, too polite, but my heart still softened. It was rare to see the child speak up like that. Still, according to the game's lore, I was supposed to be the Count's newly married wife, and I should stay by my husband's side. I braced myself for rejection. But before I could say anything, the Count's deep, velvety voice cut through the silence. "You may!" His crimson eyes swept lazily over us both. "I still have business to attend to. Let your stepmother put you to sleep." The moment the words left his lips, Peter's pale face turned bright red. Father, that's not what I meant. I don't need..." Before he could finish, I gently took his small hand and smiled. "Come on, then." He froze on the spot. Even through the glove-soft skin of his palm, I could feel his hand tremble slightly. The tips of his ears and the curve of his neck flushed pink. He gave a tiny huff, turned his head away, and muttered something under his breath, but didn't pull away. Together, we climbed the grand staircase side by side, his short legs stumbling. In an awkward rhythm, always half a step out of sync with mine. The chat went wild. Wait, is this still a horror game? Did I just switch to the wrong route? Since when is the mini-boss this adorable? I swear this is turning into a domestic slice of life. Okay, but father hot, son cute. I'm not complaining. When we finally reached his bedroom, Peter seemed to snap out of his daze. He quickly pulled his hand free, pretending to act cool as he marched to the bed. "Don't get the wrong idea," he said, voice stiff. "I didn't help you. I just ate too much tonight. Don't feel like kicking soccer balls or getting woken up for a midnight snack?" I nodded agreeably. "Got it. Honestly, he's totally tsundere." For some reason, that only made him look more annoyed. He kicked off his little boots, climbed onto the bed, and turned away, declaring haughtily, "I'm going to sleep now. You can go back to your room." But even as he said it, his eyes kept flicking toward the head of the bed. Following his gaze, I spotted the picture book sitting on the pillow, a well-worn bedtime story. Understanding dawned instantly. I smiled to myself. Well, I'm not sleepy anyway. Guess I can keep the little monster company for a while. I walked over and pulled a chair beside his bed, sitting down casually as I picked up the picture book. When I looked up, the mini-boss was already staring at me suspiciously, his dark eyes full of guarded curiosity. The classic, "What are you trying to do, woman? Look!" I kept my tone calm and steady. "Go to sleep." Peter's eyes widened. "I don't need to. I'm not a child anymore, and I don't care about those stupid bedtime stories." Yet, despite his defiant words, his body told another story. He obediently lay down, pulling the blanket up to his chin and even closing his eyes, though his pointed little ears twitched slightly beneath his golden hair. I couldn't help but laugh inwardly. Saying one thing and doing another. How adorable can this brat get? The live chat mirrored my thoughts exactly. Yep, textbook tsundere behavior. Mini boss is too cute. I can't take it. What kind of buff does this newbie have? I'm jealous already. This isn't horror anymore. It's cozy domestic fluff. I began reading softly, my voice steady and low. The atmosphere in the room grew warm and strangely peaceful, something that felt almost impossible in a place like this. Unbeknownst to me, somewhere far away in the castle, an unknown man stood a crystal orb. Inside it shimmered the image of this tranquil scene. His crimson eyes softened as he watched. And just like that, the first night passed without bloodshed. The next morning I woke up very early, still not used to the luxurious 200-square-meter bedroom I'm now occupied. The sheer size of the bed alone could fit my entire old apartment. After freshening up, I went downstairs, expecting to be the first one awake, but only to find Peter already seated at the dining table, neatly dressed and staring blankly at the human heart on his plate. Across from him sat Count Alexander Smith, reading a newspaper behind gold-rimmed glasses. The morning light filtered through the diamond-shaped windows, scattering across the room in soft fractured hues. Part of it fell across the Count's sharp profile, turning his already perfect features almost divine. So this was their daily routine. The Count read the paper while his son admired raw organs for breakfast. A normal father-son moment. In hell, hearing my footsteps, both of them turned toward me. Peter immediately tensed, licking his lips before quickly shoving the bloody heart away, pretending disinterest. His eyes flicked to me, then toward the kitchen, then back again. The meaning was painfully obvious. I bit back a smile, but before I could move, my gaze met the Count's. He set his paper down, eyes deep and unreadable, and said something that made everyone freeze. "I'd like to try my wife's cooking too, please." The live chat detonated. Excuse me? Did the great boss just say please? Who replaced the infamous Count with this polite gentleman? Girl, kiss him now. Do it for humanity. Holy hell, he's too handsome. I'm losing brain cells. No, seriously. Is this a horror game or a dating sim? Other players? We're just background NPCs now, aren't we? Under the combined heat of two pairs of eyes, one crimson, one jet black, I felt a strange flutter in my chest. Smiling, I replied lightly, "Give me a moment, then." I turned and headed for the kitchen. Inside, the three maids assigned as cooks were lounging around as usual. Since players had to maintain their roles while inside a dungeon, they couldn't leave their designated area until nightfall. As I rolled up my sleeves and began preparing breakfast, one of the girls hesitantly approached me, clutching an egg like a peace offering. Excuse me," she stammered. "You're a player too, right? My name's Mia Miller." She looked barely 18, probably a student. I nodded. "I'm Mabel Wilson." Her eyes brightened instantly. "Mabel, you were amazing yesterday. Even the mini-boss likes you. And the great boss didn't kill you either. You must have found some kind of clue, right?" "Clue?" I blinked. "Aren't we just supposed to survive 7 days?" Her hopeful expression faltered. She lowered her voice. "There's an unspoken rule here. To leave the dungeon, you need more than survival. You have to find the key. The great boss keeps it. If anyone tries to steal it, he goes berserk and kills everyone still inside." Seeing my confused face, she frowned deeper. "Didn't the butler, your escort, tell you? He's an old player. He's supposed to guide newcomers." I shook my head. From the start, he looked at me like I was already dead. Besides his scripted lines, he hasn't said a single word. Mia sighed, her eyes glistening. "Then please, please be careful. You might be our best chance at finding that key." Her voice cracked. "My grandpa's waiting for me back home. I can't die here." Her fear rippled through the room. The other two cooks. Both players exchanged uneasy looks. I didn't want to make promises I couldn't keep, but I nodded anyway. "I'll keep an eye out." By then, the noodles were done. 3 bowls of steaming egg noodles with golden yolks and bright green vegetables. Simple, but comforting. I carried the bowls back to the dining hall. The moment I stepped in, 2 pairs of eyes turned toward me again. Peter was the first to speak, his lips curling slightly. "Doesn't look as good as last night's dinner." Before I could respond, his father's calm baritone filled the room. No complaints. Peter's eyes widened in disbelief. "Father, you..." The Count didn't even glance at his son. He quietly set down the newspaper, stood up, and walked over to help me place the bowls of noodles on the table himself. Then, in a calm and natural tone, he said, "Come eat, or you'll be late for school." Peter Smith's little face deflated like a crushed bun. "Yes, father." The live chat instantly came alive again. Why? Why is this scene so funny and wholesome at the same time? Is it just me, or is the great boss spoiling the newbie? He even scolded his own son. Count Alexander Smith. Blink twice if you've been possessed by a nice guy. Family sitcom vibes unlocked. Please. Producers, don't cut to the horror yet. After breakfast, both father and son left the manor together. The moment they disappeared through the gates, every servant in the house, the maids, the gardeners, even the ever-dutiful butler dropped their act. The butler, his expression cold and humorless, gave a sharp look toward me before signaling the gardeners. "Check the second floor. Be careful not to disturb anything. Put everything back before sunset." The first gardener, a large man with a rough face, grumbled, "Damn mosquitoes in this cursed place. They're eating me alive." The other, a curly-haired woman, sighed heavily. "My room's basically a storage closet. How is anyone supposed to rest here? I just want out already." The butler's tone hardened. "Less talking. Find the key, and you can leave." It was clear that without the Count present, his polite demeanor evaporated. Now, irritation and exhaustion clouded his expression. The tall gardener sneered, "What's your problem, huh?" Before things could escalate, the curly-haired woman tugged him back and gave the butler a quick, nervous smile. "Don't mind him, Mr. Otis. He's just blunt. We're counting on you." The man called Otis didn't even blink. His face could have been carved from ice. "Go! Now!" he shouted. Without another word, the 2 gardeners headed upstairs. Even one of the maids dusting nearby quietly followed behind. A moment later, Mia Miller, the timid girl from the kitchen, appeared, wiping her hands on her apron. She frowned when she saw me still sitting on the sofa. "This is the best time to search for the key," she whispered urgently. "The Smiths won't come back before dusk. You missed your chance yesterday, so we should look now." But I wasn't convinced. If the key is really guarded by the great boss, it's not going to be lying around in plain sight. Tearing the house apart might trigger something worse. Mia paused, then nodded slowly. "You might be right. It's only the second day, after all. Better to observe a bit longer." Her words had barely left her mouth when a scream tore through the air, high, sharp, and blood-curdling. Mia's face went white. We exchanged a look, then ran upstairs. The sound came from the Count's study. But when we rushed in, the room was empty. I scanned the walls, the furniture, the curtains. Nothing seemed out of place. Then Mia's trembling voice broke the silence. "H." He was pulled into the painting. My head snapped toward the wall. There, hanging where the replica of Venus de Milo had been, was now the twisted image of the male gardener. His face was frozen mid-scream, his arm crudely severed, blood splattering across the once white canvas. The colors had turned sickly red and black, dripping down the frame like something alive. The other 2 girls who had followed us screamed in horror. I acted quickly, not daring to touch the painting. "Everyone out. Don't touch anything. It's probably cursed." One girl bolted immediately, her scream echoing down the hall. Mia chased after her, afraid she might trigger another trap. Once they were gone, I lingered a moment longer. Something about another painting on the opposite wall caught my eye. I studied it closely, the faint shimmer at the edges, the brushstroke too fresh for oil that should have dried centuries ago. A thought flashed in my mind, but before I could grasp it, Mia's voice called from downstairs. I exhaled and stepped out of the study. By sunset, the manor had sunk into its familiar silence. I expected Peter to return home first, like the night before. But this time, both he and Count Alexander Smith entered together. Peter's eyes flickered toward me. The moment he saw me, a brief glimmer of excitement quickly buried under his usual act of indifference. The Count, tall and composed, met my gaze. There was something unusually soft in his expression tonight. His voice was low, smooth, like velvet against glass. "Was everything all right at home today?" I smiled faintly. "Mostly. Though we're short 1 person now." He didn't even blink at that. Whether 1 servant vanished or 10, it clearly didn't matter to him. After dinner, the Count returned to his study, leaving me with my usual nightly duty, putting the little boss to bed. Peter, freshly washed and wrapped in his pajamas, climbed onto the bed with practiced grace. I took my place beside him, reading a children's story aloud just as I had the night before. At some point, my voice began to falter. My eyelids grew heavy. When I finally turned my head, I realized the boy wasn't asleep at all. He was staring at me. Our eyes met, and in that instant, his porcelain face flushed crimson. He coughed lightly, scrambling for an excuse. It's just your storytelling. It's too captivating. I can't sleep. I glanced down at the book in my hands. Captivating? It's The Three Little Pigs. Silence. I set the book aside, my tone soft. Peter, was there something you wanted to tell me? He hesitated, lips parting as if struggling with something unsaid. For a moment, I thought he might actually speak. But then he lowered his head and muttered, almost too softly to hear, "No, nothing." As expected, the thoughts of a child were always impossible to read. The next few days passed in a quiet rhythm. I continued cooking for young Peter Smith and reading him stories at night. At first, he remained distant, stiff with cold politeness and forced indifference, but as time went on, he began to change. He started helping me carry dishes, even volunteering to fetch spoons or pour milk. Each time, Count Alexander Smith would stand silently nearby, a faint smile tugging at his lips. There was no sign of the merciless tyrant people had warned me about. At night, he still worked late in his study, never intruding on my rest. Yet, every time I read Peter a bedtime story, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was standing outside the door and watching. Each time I turned to look, there was nothing there. Perhaps it was just my imagination. Days slipped by peacefully. Too peacefully until the final day arrived. Before dawn, all players were supposed to escape the dungeon. If we failed to find the key, we'd all be erased along with the world. The air in the manor grew tense. Even the normally composed butler could no longer hide his unease. When the Count and his son left for the day, the butler suddenly approached me. For the first time, his words weren't from the game's scripted dialogue. "Did you find the key?" I was about to shake my head when his eyes narrowed. A dangerous glint flickered there. "Even if you didn't," he murmured, "you might still survive. Considering how tolerant the Count and his son have been with you, perhaps even touching those cursed things won't kill you." Before I could react, he nodded toward one of the female gardeners. She stepped forward without hesitation, grabbing my wrist. "Come on, upstairs." The live chat went wild. What? I thought we were watching a cozy family show. Now it's turning into a torture chamber again. That butler's definitely a veteran player. He's using the newbie as bait. "Everyone knows you touch anything in the study, you're dead meat." Panic clawed up my throat. For the first time in days, I found myself hoping the Count would return. The gardener's grip was iron strong. I struggled, but she dragged me toward the stairs with ease. Mia Miller burst out from the kitchen, placing herself between us. "Hey, why are you targeting her?" The butler's cold gaze flicked toward Mia. "You want to leave, don't you? She's the only one the monsters won't kill. The rest of us won't be spared. Think carefully before you speak." Mia faltered, her lips trembling. For a brief moment, I thought she might stand her ground. But in the end, she looked away. Between saving a stranger and saving herself, she chose herself. The butler and the gardener exchanged cruel smirks, then dragged me upstairs. The study door loomed ahead. The room where one of the gardeners had been devoured by a painting days ago. It made sense. If the Count spent every night here, this must be where the key was hidden. The curly-haired woman locked the door behind us. Her voice was sharp with urgency. "Which one do you think it is, Otis?" The study had no books, only paintings. Dozens of them. Every wall was covered in ornate frames, each depicting a different scene. Saints, monsters, the sea, the night sky. Otis Jackson's eyes swept across them, calculating and cold. He didn't answer immediately. I scanned the room, too. It looked exactly as it had when I'd first entered on the second day. Every piece restored, every painting in perfect condition. Even Venus de Milo, the one that had swallowed the male gardener whole, now hung pristine and pure, as though nothing had ever happened. The silence grew heavy. No one dared move. Just as I began to think Otis might test them one by one, his voice cut through the air, deep and certain. "That one—" I followed his gaze. Under the flickering candlelight, the painting he pointed to showed a starry sky. At first glance, it looked ordinary and beautiful. But its placement was strange. It hung at the center of the room, surrounded by other masterpieces like stars encircling a moon. Otis turned to the gardener and said flatly, "Let her touch it." The woman didn't hesitate. She seized my wrist and forced my hand against the painting. My fingertips brushed the smooth surface, then, in the very next instant, a stabbing. Pain shot through them, followed by an invisible force that yanked me forward. I was pulled into the painting. No resistance, no escape. Am I dead? The thought flickered through my mind. I expected agony, bones shattering, flesh dissolving just like what had happened to the gardener. But the pain hasn't come. When I opened my eyes, I was standing beneath an old sunlit rooftop at dawn. All around me were rows of mismatched flower pots like succulents, cactuses, tiny bonsai. Where? Am I? Lost in thought again? A warm voice, familiar and achingly clear, broke through my confusion. A can of grape soda appeared before my eyes. I turned and froze. Before me stood a boy of 18, with chestnut hair brushing his ears, pale skin, and eyes the color of soft amber. A small beauty mark rested beneath the corner of his eye. When he smiled, it felt like sunlight had broken through a storm. Liam Garcia, 18 years old. He wore a black turtleneck against the chill of late autumn, sitting on the edge of the rooftop. When he noticed my dazed expression, he chuckled and reached out to ruffle my hair. "Mabel, I'm leaving soon. I got accepted to study painting overseas." He'd always been talented and gifted. I knew that if he left, he'd become a brilliant artist someday. I heard myself laugh lightly, pretending to sound indifferent. "Then go. When you're rich and famous, buy me a really good telescope, so I can see every star up close." He smiled, serious and gentle. "Deal. 5 years at most. When I come back, I'll paint you a sky full of stars just for you." "You said it," I replied. No takebacks. I smiled as he turned and walked away, growing smaller and smaller in the distance. But as his silhouette faded, a wave of unease surged in my chest. I wanted to run after him, to hold him back, but then the world flashed white. When the light cleared, I was no longer on the rooftop. I was standing in a studio abroad. A calendar on the wall showed 4 years had passed. It was night. Under the dim glow of a lamp, Liam Garcia sat at his easel, focused and calm. Before him was a completed painting named A Starry Sky. He added the final stroke, set the brush down, and exhaled softly. Then he picked up his phone, a small smile curving his lips. "Tomorrow's her 18th birthday. I'll give her a surprise." The words shattered something in me. 18th birthday. I remembered that day too well, that the day I waited for him, and he didn't forget. He left his studio that night. On his way to the airport, he was attacked, dragged from his car, shot over and over. Blood painted the pavement red. Even as he fell, he clutched that painting to his chest, our sky full of stars. I watched, frozen, the image reflected in my tear-filled eyes, a pain so sharp it stole my breath. I reached out, screaming silently, trying to reach him, but my hands passed through air. He had never forgotten. All those years I thought he'd abandoned me while I lay dying, bitter and alone. He had never come back because he couldn't. As I wept, a voice whispered behind me, soft and deep, "Don't cry." I turned and saw him. Not the boy from the past, but the man he'd become. Count Alexander Smith. The world blurred again, colors dissolving into white mist. When the fog lifted, I was back inside the study. The butler and the woman were gone. Through the open door, I could see the fading light of dusk. And standing there in the doorway was little Peter. When he saw me safe, relief flashed across his face, only for him to immediately scowl and march forward, grabbing my wrist. "What were you thinking, running in here like that? Father hates it when people touch his paintings. Normally, they'd lose a hand or their life." Then, like a tiny, furious knight, he pushed me out of the study. "You got what you came for. Now leave." The live chat was in chaos. Wait, what? Did the mini-boss just save her again? This has to be the second time he's begged the Count to spare her. The last person who touched a painting is still hanging on the wall, remember? Poor newbie, forced into a death trap by other players. But hey, looks like she found the key. I looked down and realized that in my hands was the Starry Sky painting. So this was the key. Peter pulled me away just as the study door slammed shut behind us. Through the crack, I saw the Count still standing there, unmoving. His amber eyes slowly bled into crimson. Yet he stayed where he was. Just then, a voice shouted from down the hall. Mia Miller burst out from behind a column, grabbed my arm, and yelled, "Run!" Still dazed, I let her drag me through the corridors, down the staircase, until we reached the storage hall on the first floor. The surviving players were already there, their faces pale and desperate. When they saw me, they stepped aside instantly. On the back wall was an empty frame, the perfect size for the painting I held. I froze. At my feet lay dozens of torn, blood-stained, and burned canvases. All of them have starry skies. Destroyed. Desecrated. No wonder he'd gone mad. Mia looked at me, panic in her voice. "What's wrong? Hurry!" The others stared too, eyes wild with fear and desperate hope. Every single one of them wanted to live. My thoughts got tangled. My heart ached. If I placed the painting, the door would open and they could all escape. But doing so would destroy his painting. Liam's promise. His final gift. If I didn't, we'd all be trapped here forever. What was I supposed to do? I pressed my trembling hand to the frame. The door opened, and at that exact moment, Count Alexander Smith appeared. He moved like a storm unleashed with eyes crimson, expression twisted with pain and fury. Just like the night he'd died. His gaze swept over the torn painting on the floor, then met mine confused, lost, as if asking, why? Why had I destroyed the only thing he'd left behind? But when so many lives hang in the balance, what else could I do? My heart cracked. Even breathing hurts. He, Liam, stepped toward me, one slow, trembling step at a time. Behind him, Peter rushed forward, standing between us with all his tiny courage. "Father, that's Mom!" The word hit me like lightning. Mom? For the first time, he called me that. The chat exploded. "I'm crying in a horror game, someone help!" Mini-boss protecting Mom against Great Boss. This is pure heartbreak. Every NPC here has a tragedy behind them. God, this story hurts. By now, every player had already escaped through the portal. Only Mia remained, tugging at my arm in tears. "Go. He'll kill you if you stay." But what did I have to go back to? No family, no one is waiting. The only person I'd ever waited for was standing right in front of me. It's the man who had loved me enough to paint a sky of stars. I wiped my tears and smiled faintly, pushing Mia toward the glowing doorway. "Go, Mia. Don't worry about me." She kept shouting my name as the light swallowed her. And then, a hand, icy and trembling, wrapped around my throat. It's Liam Garcia. The door of light behind me began to close. And over the fading hum of the portal, the system's voice echoed coldly in my mind. "Player, please evacuate immediately. Once the timer expires, escape will no longer be possible." I couldn't breathe. But, strangely enough, I wasn't afraid. Even as his hand tightened around my throat, I lifted my head to look at him. Really look at him. Those eyes, still the same soft amber I had once loved, now clouded with 1,000 tangled emotions, joy, disbelief, sorrow, even regret. So many words swelled in my chest, but not a single one could pass my lips. Only tears fell. It's true. When emotion rises beyond all limits, language simply breaks. Peter panicked, running in frantic circles around us, clinging to his father's leg and crying, "Dad, don't hurt Mom! Please, don't!" But before he could say another word, Liam shoved him aside, not violently, but enough to send him stumbling back. Just when I thought it was over, when I felt my consciousness slipping away, but a pair of cold arms suddenly wrapped around me. When I opened my eyes again, his irises had turned back to that familiar shade of light amber. The corners were wet and tinged red. His voice was hoarse, trembling, yet tender as ever. "You've suffered enough. All these years." Such simple words, and they broke me. I sobbed like a child, my voice shaking. Then, "Let me stay. Let's paint that sky of stars again, together. I don't want to leave anymore." He held me tighter, so gently, almost hurt. His tone was soft, just like that autumn night years ago. "Mabel, if you complete this instance, the system will reward you. You'll be healed. You can live again. This place is too dangerous. I don't want you to suffer anymore." Before I could answer, he suddenly pushed me hard toward the glowing gate. My eyes widened. "Liam Garcia!" The light swallowed everything. And then silence. When I opened my eyes again, I was at home. The weak, dying body I'd once had felt light, strong, alive, just as Liam had promised. But my heart felt hollow. He was gone. Truly gone. I pressed my hands to my face and wept. Half a year passed. The system's voice came again, cold and mechanical. "Welcome to the manor of Count Alexander Smith. Your new identity is that of the Count's newlywed wife. Maintain your role and survive 7 days. Do not act out of character. Have a pleasant death." A new player beside me gasped, trembling. "As Sister Mabel, your role, don't tell me." They say no one who played as the Count's wife has ever survived a single day. I smiled faintly. Outside, dusk was falling. The butler arrived, looking tired, monotone. "Madam, the young master has returned from school. Please join him for dinner." I told the cook to return to the kitchen and reminded her of a few safety rules, then stepped into the dining hall. Peter was there, poking idly at the heart on his plate with a fork. "Does it taste good, sweetheart?" I asked softly. He looked up sharply and froze. The next moment, his eyes filled with light. "Mom." Before I could react, a gust of cold wind swept through the hall. The great doors swung open. A tall figure stepped inside, the air around him crackling with restrained power. Liam Garcia. Or rather, Count Alexander Smith. The butler didn't even have time to announce, "The Count has returned," before Liam crossed the room in long strides and pulled me into his arms. That embrace was fiercely desperate, as if he wanted to merge our souls together. I laughed softly, patting his shoulder. "You still owe me that painting of the starry sky, you know." He lowered his head, voice rough with emotion. "You destroyed it." I smiled through the tears and looked up into his stunned eyes. Then, gently, I rose on my toes and pressed my lips to his. "Then let me spend the rest of my life making it up to you." And in that instant, the world outside the manor shimmered with countless stars.